Echoes of the Unknown.
Chapter 1. The Assignment. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, November 12, 2019, while I was nursing my third cup of coffee in my cramped office at the University of Iceland. The divorce papers were still sitting on my desk, unsigned, a constant reminder of how spectacularly I'd managed to ruin my personal life. Work was my escape, my sanctuary, and when Dr. Magnus Eriksson knocked on my door with an urgent project, I practically leaped at the opportunity. "Astrid, I need someone I can trust," Magnus said, his usually jovial face creased with concern. He was a bear of a man, all white beard and laugh lines, but today he looked haggard. "The Reykjavik research station has been reporting irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" I asked, already reaching for my field notebook. "Equipment malfunctions. But it's stranger than that." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The night shift team says their instruments are recording impossible data, timestamps that don't match, sensors detecting movement in sealed tanks, and," he hesitated again, "and 3 researchers have quit in the past month. They won't say why." The Reykjavik station was our satellite facility, built adjacent to an abandoned fish processing plant about 45 minutes outside Reykjavik. It monitored ocean temperatures and marine migration patterns. Routine work, nothing that should send seasoned scientists running. "When do you need me there?" "Tonight. Can you handle a few night shifts, just until we figure out what's happening?" I thought about my empty apartment, the silence that pressed against my eardrums every evening since Björn had moved out. "I'll pack my things." The drive to Grindavik that evening was spectacular in that uniquely Icelandic way, the sun barely cresting the horizon at 3 p.m., painting the volcanic landscape in shades of purple and gold. The northern lights were forecast for later, and I found myself looking forward to the isolation. Just me, my research, and the endless Atlantic darkness. The research station was a modern prefab structure, all glass and steel, incongruously attached to the hulking concrete corpse of the old fish processing plant. The Tímaþjófur company had abandoned it in 1973, after what the records simply called an industrial accident. 7 workers had gone missing during a night shift. They were never found. Gunnar, the security guard, met me at the entrance. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested too much coffee or not enough sleep. "Dr. Johannsdottir, I'm supposed to give you the tour." His English was heavily accented but clear. "Though honestly there's not much to see. Just don't go into the old plant. Structural damage." The research station itself was exactly what I'd expected. Banks of computers, monitoring equipment, a small kitchen, and sleeping quarters for overnight staff. Everything seemed normal until Gunnar showed me the logbooks. "This is why people quit," he said, opening a notebook filled with increasingly frantic handwriting. "Look at the timestamps." I scanned the entries. "Due to Farfo, temperature anomaly detected. Sensor 7. Due to Farfo, investigating anomaly. Due to Farfo, temperature anomaly detected. Sensor 7. Chapter 2. First night. Gunnar left at 6 p.m., just as the last pretense of daylight faded from the sky. The darkness in Iceland during winter isn't like darkness elsewhere. It's a living thing, thick and oppressive, broken only by the ethereal green dance of the aurora borealis. I settled into my routine, checking sensors, recording data, trying to ignore the way the old processing plant groaned and settled in the wind. The building was massive, its broken windows like dead eyes staring at the research station. According to the records I'd pulled up, the Tímaþjófur company had been experimenting with new flash freezing techniques when the accident occurred. The details were frustratingly vague. At 11:30 p.m., I was analyzing water samples when the first anomaly occurred. The digital clock on my computer jumped backward. 11:30 became 11:15. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, checked my watch. It showed 11:30. "Tired already, Astrid?" I muttered to myself, syncing the computer clock with the atomic time server. At 11:47 p.m., the temperature sensors in Tank 7 spiked. The water had suddenly warmed by 12 degrees Celsius, impossible without a heating element. I grabbed my flashlight and headed to the tank room. The corridor connecting the research station to the tank room ran along the exterior wall of the old processing plant. Through the reinforced glass, I could see into the abandoned facility. My flashlight beam caught movement, just a shadow, probably debris shifting in the wind. Tank 7 was exactly as it should be. The water was cold, 4 degrees Celsius according to my handheld sensor. I checked the main sensor unit. It read 16 degrees. "Faulty equipment," I said aloud, my voice echoing in the empty room. But as I turned to leave, I heard it, a sound like footsteps on the metal catwalk above the tanks. Slow, deliberate steps. "Hello," I called out. "Gunnar, is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. I climbed the ladder to the catwalk, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The walkway was empty, but wet footprints led toward the door to the old processing plant. Fresh footprints. Every instinct told me to return to the station, to lock the doors and wait for morning. But I was a scientist. I didn't believe in ghosts or monsters. Someone was playing games, trying to scare off another researcher. I followed the footprints. Chapter 3. The Old Plant. The door to the processing plant was supposed to be locked, but it swung open at my touch. The smell hit me immediately: salt, rust, and something else. Something organic and wrong. My flashlight revealed a vast space filled with conveyor belts and processing equipment, all covered in decades of dust and corrosion. The footprints continued deeper into the facility. "This is Dr. Johannsdottir," I called out, trying to sound authoritative. "You're trespassing on university property. Show yourself." My voice echoed back, distorted. "Show yourself, yourself." I followed the prints past rows of empty freezer units, their doors hanging open like mouths. The temperature dropped noticeably, my breath forming clouds in the beam of my flashlight. Ice crystals crunched under my boots. The footprints led to a central processing room dominated by a massive flash-freezing unit, a cylindrical chamber 20 feet tall, its sides covered in frost despite decades of abandonment. The footprints circled the unit and then disappeared. I approached the chamber, wiping frost from a small window in its side. My flashlight beam penetrated the ice-covered glass, revealing the interior. What I saw made me stumble backward. Bodies, 7 of them perfectly preserved in ice, their faces twisted in expressions of absolute terror. They wore work uniforms with Sjávarútvegur emblazoned on the chest. The missing workers from 1973. But that wasn't the worst part. One of them was moving. Not much, just the eyes, tracking my movements. I ran, sprinted back through the plant, slipping on ice, banging into equipment, my flashlight beam swinging wildly. Behind me I heard a sound like breaking glass, like ice cracking. I burst through the door into the research station and slammed it shut, engaging every lock. My hands shook as I reached for my phone to call the police. No signal. The landline was dead too. I checked the time, 11:47 p.m. That couldn't be right. I'd been in the plant for at least an hour. I checked my watch, my phone, every clock in the station. They all showed 11:47. Chapter 4. The loop begins. I spent the rest of the night barricaded in the main office, watching the security monitors. The cameras showed nothing unusual. Empty corridors, dark rooms, the entrance to the old plant sealed and undisturbed. As if I'd never opened it. When my phone showed 6 a.m., I nearly cried with relief. Gunnar would arrive soon. We'd call the police, investigate properly, get those bodies out of that freezer. But 6 a.m. came and went. The darkness outside remained absolute. I checked the weather data. Sunrise should have been at 9:47 a.m., but the clock now read 10:15, and the world outside was still pitch black. I tried to rationalize it. Volcanic ash in the atmosphere? An unusual weather phenomenon? But deep down I knew something was fundamentally wrong. At what should have been noon, I ventured outside. The northern lights still danced overhead, impossibly bright. The stars were in the exact same positions they'd been at midnight. Even the wind patterns were identical. Back inside, I pulled up the research station's data logs. Every sensor, every measurement, showed the same repeating pattern starting at 11:47 p.m. Temperature, pressure, salinity, all locked in an endless loop. I tried to call my sister Elsa in Reykjavik. The phone rang, but when she answered, her voice was strange, mechanical. "Astrid, why are you calling so late?" "Elsa, what time is it there? It's nearly midnight. Are you okay?" "Elsa, listen to me. Something's wrong at the station. I need you to The line went dead. When I called back, I got the same conversation, word for word, like a recording. Chapter 5. Research and Revelation. I dove into the station's archives, desperate for answers. The 1973 incident had more documentation than I'd initially found, buried in scanned papers and old reports. The Sjávarútvegur company hadn't just been experimenting with flash freezing. They'd been working on something called temporal preservation, a theoretical process that would freeze not just organic matter but time itself around the product, keeping it perpetually fresh. The lead scientist, Dr. Valdimar Thorsson, had written extensively about his theories. His notes became increasingly unhinged toward the end. Time is not a river but an ocean. We swim in it, unaware of the currents below. But something swims there with us. Something that feeds on moments, on hours, on days. We've attracted its attention. It's coming. The last entry dated the night of the accident. We've torn a hole. The Tímaþjófur is here. God help us all. Tímaþjófur, Old Icelandic, Time Thief. I heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, deliberate, wet. Chapter 6. Contact. The door to the office opened. A man in a Sjávarútvegur uniform stood there, ice crystals falling from his clothes. His skin was blue-white, his eyes milky but aware. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through broken glass. "You found us." I pressed myself against the far wall. You're dead. Frozen for 46 years. Not dead. Preserved. Caught between moments." He stepped forward, leaving wet footprints. "It feeds on time. Steals it. Hoards it. We're its collection. What does it want? More. Always more. You've entered its web. Every loop it takes a little more of you. Soon you'll be like us. frozen between heartbeats. The lights flickered. Behind the frozen man, I saw it. A shadow that wasn't quite a shadow. A distortion in the air, like heat shimmer in reverse. It moved wrong, existed wrong, as if it occupied multiple moments simultaneously. The frozen man's expression changed to one of terror. It's feeding. Run. Break the loop. The old freezing unit. Destroy it. It's the anchor. The hole we tore. The shadow engulfed him. When it passed, he was gone. Only a puddle of water remained. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. I grabbed an emergency fire axe from the wall. If the freezing unit was the anchor, I had to destroy it. But first, I needed to get back into the old plant. The journey was different this time. The corridors stretched longer than they should. Doors led to rooms that couldn't exist in the building's footprint. Time stuttered and jumped. I'd take a step and find myself 3 rooms ahead, then back where I started. The Tímaþjófur was playing with me. In the processing room, all 7 bodies were now free from the ice, standing in a circle around the freezing unit. They spoke in unison. You cannot break what is already broken. You cannot flee what exists in every moment. Join us. Let it feed. The shadow creature materialized fully. It was impossible to describe. Not because it was hideous, but because it existed in too many states at once. Young and old, large and small, there and not there. Looking at it was like trying to focus on everything and nothing simultaneously. It spoke without a mouth, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. Time is my domain. Past, present, future. All are my feeding ground. You entered my web willingly. Now you are mine. I swung the axe at the freezing unit. It connected with a sound like shattering bells. Cracks appeared in the metal, spreading like a spider web. The frozen workers screamed. The Tímaþjófur rushed at me, a wave of distorted time. Where it touched, I aged and grew young simultaneously. My hair turned white, then brown, then white again. My hands wrinkled and smoothed in rapid succession. The sensation was agony, every cell in my body experiencing decades in seconds. I swung the axe again, harder. The freezing unit split open, releasing a blast of air so cold it burned. Inside, instead of machinery, was a swirling vortex of frozen moments. I saw myself entering the building, saw the workers from 1973 conducting their experiment, saw 1,000 other victims across decades, all trapped in the same eternal instant. You cannot. The Tímaþjófur's voice shattered windows. I am eternal. I am inevitable. But the frozen workers were moving now, not toward me but toward the creature. They formed a barrier between us. Their leader, Dr. Thorson, I realized, speaking with tremendous effort. We open the door. We must close it, destroy the anchor, free us all. The creature attacked its former victims, tearing through them like tissue paper. But they reformed, again and again, buying me time. I struck the freezing unit repeatedly, each blow releasing more trapped moments. I saw my wedding day, my divorce, my childhood in Reykjavik, all bleeding out of the vortex and dissipating. With a final swing, I shattered the core mechanism. The vortex collapsed. The Tímaþjófur let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like the universe itself groaning. It began to fold in on itself, pulling everything toward it. The frozen workers smiled as they were drawn in, finally free. The walls of the plant started to buckle and twist. I ran. Behind me, time itself was unraveling. Past and future collided. I saw the plant as it was in 1973, full of workers. I saw it in 2050, completely demolished. I saw 1,000 versions of myself running through the same corridor. The research station door was just ahead. I dove through as the old plant imploded behind me, collapsing not just in space but in time. The shockwave knocked me unconscious. Chapter 8. Dawn. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows. Actual sunlight. My phone showed November 15th, 2019, 10:23 a.m. 3 days had passed. Gunnar was shaking my shoulder. Dr. Johannsdottir, thank God, we've been looking everywhere for you. The plant, I croaked. The old processing plant. What plant? He looked genuinely confused. There's nothing there but empty land, has been for decades. I stumbled to the window. Where the massive processing facility had stood, there was only bare volcanic rock. No ruins, no foundation, nothing, as if it had never existed. But the connection corridor, the door. Gunnar's expression grew more concerned. Dr. Johannsdottir, you've been missing for 3 days. We found your car by the road, covered in ice. Search and rescue has been combing the area. Where have you been? I couldn't answer. How could I explain? Magnus arrived within the hour, along with police and paramedics. They found me dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. My story about being trapped in the station made no sense. The security footage showed me leaving at 11:47 p.m. on November 12th and simply vanishing. Chapter 9. The Evidence. Back in Reykjavik, I tried to piece together what had happened. The Grindavik research station's records showed no anomalies. No researchers had quit. There were no reports of equipment malfunctions. According to all official documentation, I'd suffered some kind of breakdown and wandered into the wilderness for 3 days. But I had proof, or so I thought. The photos on my phone were corrupted, showing only static. The voice recordings I'd made were blank. Even my handwritten notes had faded to illegibility. Only one thing remained, a single timestamp in my phone's metadata, repeated thousands of times, 2347. I researched the Sjávarútvegur company. It had existed but closed in 1962 due to bankruptcy. No industrial accident, no missing workers, no processing plant in Grindavik. Elsa visited me during my mandatory psychological evaluation. Astrid, the doctors say you experienced a severe dissociative episode. The stress from the divorce, the isolation. I know what happened, I insisted. The Tímaþjófur, the frozen workers, the time loop, it was all real. She squeezed my hand. I believe you believe that. But Astrid, I called you that night. We talked about your dinner plans. You sounded strange, distant, then you hung up and disappeared. What time did I call? She checked her phone. 11:47 p.m. Chapter 10. The Pattern. I returned to work after a month of leave. Magnus kept me on day shifts, close to the main campus. I threw myself into research, but not marine biology. I studied temporal anomalies, missing person cases, industrial accidents that didn't quite add up. The pattern emerged slowly. Every few decades, somewhere in the world, people vanished during night shifts. Factories, research stations, isolated facilities. The locations were different, but the stories were eerily similar. Equipment malfunctions, repeated timestamps, workers who quit without explanation. And always, the sites were eventually abandoned, demolished, or simply faded from record. I found a support group online. People who claimed to have encountered temporal anomalies. Most were clearly delusional, but a few had details that matched my experience too closely to be coincidence. A security guard from a warehouse in Detroit. The clock kept showing 3:33 a.m. I was there for what felt like weeks, but only one night passed. A nurse from a hospital in Tokyo. The abandoned wing wasn't supposed to exist, but I saw the patients there, frozen between life and death. A researcher from Antarctica. Something lives in the spaces between seconds. It's always hungry. We compared notes, tried to find connections. The only constant was isolation and the presence of some kind of industrial or scientific equipment, as if certain human activities could wear thin the barriers between moments, creating feeding grounds for things that shouldn't exist. Epilogue. The warning. It's been 4 years now. I still work at the University of Iceland. Still study the ocean. But I never work night shifts. Never work alone. And I stay away from Grindavik, even though satellite images show nothing but empty land where my memories insist a research station should be. Sometimes, late at night my clocks stutter. 11:46 becomes 11:47, becomes 11:46 again. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remind me that it's still out there, somewhere, somewhen. The Tímaþjófur. The Time Thief. I've written this account as a warning. If you find yourself alone on a night shift, and the clocks start acting strange, leave. Don't investigate. Don't try to be rational. The thing that feeds on time is always looking for new hunting grounds, new moments to steal, new people to add to its collection. And if you see footprints that shouldn't be there, wet and fresh in places that have been dry for decades, run. Run and don't look back. Because once you've entered its web, once you've caught its attention, time itself becomes your enemy. The universe is vast and full of wonders, but some wonders are hungry, and they have all the time in the world to wait. Dr. Astrid Johannsdottir still works at the University of Iceland. She has never returned to Grindavik. Official records show no research station ever existed at the coordinates she describes. The Sjávarútvegur company's records remain sealed by the Icelandic government, citing industrial privacy concerns. If you have experienced temporal anomalies or unexplained missing time, you are not alone. But be careful who you tell. Some things are better left unfed.